Hello, and welcome to another episode of Italian Property Lawyers Podcast. In today's episode, we have a very special guest, and it's a success story. And I'm pleased to introduce your listeners, Professor Karen Lundquist from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Karen, I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. I really appreciate the invitation, Luca, and I'm happy to be here with you.
Thank you so much. Just for our listeners, Karen knows very well Italian language, but we will do this interview in English, if you don't mind. And also, Karen spent, I think, 13 years in Roma, Italy. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. And so I think she can just give you some very useful insights about everything. So, Karen, are you ready?
I am ready. Yes, ready as I'll ever be, as we say.
Okay, I just wrote down some questions for you. Otherwise, I didn't want to forget any questions, to be honest. So I have a sheet with some questions for you. Okay, so I'd like to start with a general question. And the question is, how did you decide to buy a property in Umbria? And specifically, why Amelia?
It's kind of a funny story. I had never been to Amelia before June of last year when I saw various apartments, houses, and eventually saw the one that I ended up buying. And the reason I was attracted to Amelia, I didn't know it was this charming medieval village, that it was the type of place in Italy that Americans and foreigners love. I liked the name. I have two beautiful nieces. The youngest is Melina, and the oldest is Amelia. So when I learned, I think it was 2022, I was in that part of Umbria visiting a friend of mine who lives vicino a, I started to say, who lives near Amelia. I saw a street sign, a sign with mileage to Amelia. And I was like, oh my God, I had no idea there was a town named Amelia in Italy. And I just left it there. And then, I don't know, I just got it in my mind. It's like, I think I need to have, it's my destiny to have an apartment in Amelia. This was last year. So I started looking and went there last June, went and met with the real estate agents and they showed me places. And ended up finding this place that I eventually that ended up buying. But it was because of the name and my niece, Amelia. I have since learned, I will add, that there also is a town named Milena in Sicily. I have told my other niece I am not buying an apartment in Milena, Sicily. So I'll stick with just Amelia.
Who knows?
But that was it. And then I was lucky because it's this beautiful, charming little town as well, close to Rome. And but that's the reason.
Yeah, I think another possible reason could be that you lived in Rome for a long time, let's say, and you wanted to stay close by Rome, I'd say.
Oh, of course. I mean, that's of course, yes. I never even imagined. I mean, ideally, I would have purchased a place in Rome, but I don't have the money for that. So yes, in my calculations, it was never even an option to look farther away from Rome. I want to be near Rome. And I'm closer to Rome than I am in Minneapolis with an apartment in Amelia. I'm still here in Minneapolis. But yes, absolutely. That's why I never considered any other part of Italy aside from Lazio, perhaps, or Umbria. And in fact, Amelia is just over the border into Umbria. So it's very close to Rome. It's about 45 minutes from the northern suburbs of Rome.
But train?
No, driving. I haven't taken public transportation there yet. The times I've been there, I've rented a car.
Okay. So let's just go a bit deeper, okay? Mm-hmm. So was this your first experience buying a property abroad? Did you have any particular concerns before starting the journey, let's say?
It was my first time buying any property abroad. When I lived in Rome, I rented with roommates and then on my own the last, 8 years or something like that I was there. And my husband inherited some property in El Salvador, but it was never purchased, and it was a home that was constructed. He just inherited a lot. So, no, this was the first experience and only my second experience buying a house, because the home where we live now, we bought 10 years ago, and I was never a homeowner before that, because I rented for so many years when I was in Rome before returning here to the States. So, no, it was my first experience, and buying a home is a big deal, regardless of whether it's, a mid-century rambler like we have here in Bloomington, Minnesota, or whether it's an apartment in a medieval town. It's still buying a piece of property. So certainly there's anxiety that comes with that big decision, and especially with it abroad, it takes on additional stress and just additional considerations because you're not there.
Yeah, I think it's been easier maybe for you because you were used to Italian culture, Italian language, so it's not, it wasn't so tough maybe for you, even though we had some issues in the purchase process, as you may remember, but
Right.
maybe this helped, I think.
For sure. Oh yeah, I think it would be really hard to go through the whole process, to have property in Italy or in any country and not speak the language and not be accustomed to how the country works, especially the language, because it's hard to deal with the bureaucracy and the comune and just the different agencies or companies that you need to deal with when you have a home or an apartment, even it's for the plumber, if you don't speak the language. Absolutely.
And another really interesting question. So you, being a lecturer and a lawyer, how did the purchasing process in Italy compare with your experience in the US?
It was very similar in the sense that we sign a property, a purchase agreement, the contratto preliminare, right?
La proposta di acquisto.
Is that what it is? Okay, see, I don't even know the names. So we sign that, and then there's the closing period where, the inspections and the title and all of those things are done, and then you have the closing date. A big difference is the role of the notary. We don't have that here in the States. The notary is there at the closing, but it's just to notarize. It's, you don't pay anything for it. So that's a difference, most certainly in just considering or calculating the cost. I think that was one of the biggest differences, but I knew that because I knew from having lived there that notaries play a much more important role in the process than they do here. Many people buy a home here in the States without having a lawyer representing them. We did, and not because I'm a lawyer. I don't do real estate, but it simply isn't always a person who's there, a figure that's there in the process. So it's very different. I think it's really important to have that assistance when you're doing it in a foreign country, just to make sure you're not getting cheated, or you're not, that everything is on the up and up and is as it should be, for sure.
Yeah, as you know, notaries play a different role in Italy,
Yes.
as you said before.
Yes.
In Italy is a more solemn role, let's say, but the notary intervenes only in the last phase of the purchase
Right.
process, the last day, I'd say. But if you made some mess before, you have a big responsibility, because the notary won't represent your interests, represents only the government, and can't intervene before. And
Right.
this is why just carrying out a proper due diligence, title search, establish every needed contingencies in the purchase proposal is really important, as you have seen, and another important question for you. So you have to deal with renovations in your house.
Yeah.
And I'd like you to explain these aspects a bit better to our listeners.
Well, I think depending on the property you buy, I think there here in the States too, or perhaps anywhere, there's always an expectation you're going to have to do something unless you're buying a new construction. The apartment that I purchased in Amelia is not a new construction. It's a building from, I don't know, I think the 1800s. So, and there's stuff that needs to be done. So I've been very, very lucky. And I think this is one of the wonderful things of having bought property, an apartment in a small town, unlike if I had done it in Rome, where I was there in December for just about 10 days, a week, 10 days. And I met some wonderful people who were helping me. One is he has a property management company, and when the apartment is all ready, when I get everything done this summer, he's interested in renting it out via Airbnb or other sites like that for short-term rental. I felt comfortable leaving him a set of keys. And then I was really lucky to meet this amazing handyman. I hired him to paint the apartment. And it turns out he's really good at doing a whole bunch of stuff, and he knows a whole lot of people. He's very trustworthy and reliable. Really is an amazing person. I was really lucky to hook up with him. So I call him, we speak. He's helping me with plumbing. He helped me we had to do some repairs on the roof. So he put me in contact with a high school friend. I think it was high school or just a friend that he knew from Terni. And he has a construction company, and he's repairing the roof for me. So I've been really lucky to meet some really nice people who are reliable and trustworthy, who have the keys of the apartment and are helping me with doing the work. They're not really renovations. It's just more repair work of stuff that needed to be done. But yeah, it's challenging. It's definitely challenging because you're not there. And and a few things like the water heater needs to be fixed and just checked out. And the owner has to be there in order for that to be done. So that will happen in June, where we'll take care of that.
Well, Amelia is a little, I don't want to say village, but it's a little town.
It's a little town.
So life in this kind of towns is really different than in big cities.
Absolutely. It never would have happened in Rome if I had been in Rome. So, it's a wonderful part about it. There's about 10,000 people in Amelia. And then with the frazioni, with the hamlets, it's about 13,000 people. So it's just a very different atmosphere and just different relations than in a big city, for sure.
I agree. I've never been there because we closed in Terni.
Mm-hmm.
It's the nearby town, let's say. But, in these little villages, people are warmer, I'd say. And there's, I'd say, an availability to help each other. So I think it's a very good aspect about buying a house in those kind of little towns,
Yep. I would agree. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious to ask you, is there anything you would do differently if you could go back in time? I have one friend in particular in Rome. She is a real estate agent, and I'm always too independent. I was like, I can do things on my own. And I wish I had asked Donatella to come with me and have a second set of eyes. So that I wish that I had someone who was there with me so I think that don't be the overly independent type like me. I wish I had done that. but that's it. I mean, and that's just me, that I tend to do that. So it's like, yeah, I can do it myself. So I wish that I would have done. Yeah, well. Okay.
Whether it was a friend or anyone, just having someone else at my side. And I didn't do that. So, but that's me.
I think, again, you lived here for a long time, so maybe you think you can do things in your own, and like you're doing right now after the purchase. So you're doing in your own everything, and I think you're doing a great job, to be honest. So.
Well, I am, but sometimes it's especially. I mean, I'm relying more on people than I normally do. Here we're going into like psychoanalysis of Karen and her overly. But I mean, and I guess that really the lesson is you have to find people who are going to help you if you're not there. Whether it's people you pay or just people you get to know, whether it's the neighbors. I'm in a WhatsApp group chat already with the other people who live in the palazzo. And there's only 4 apartments in total. But, one of the, Daniela, one of the other apartment owners, she sent me an image of a certified letter, raccomandata, that I got. And I was like, well, I'm here in Minneapolis. I can't go sign for that. But it was nice, that she said, oh, Karen, you got this raccomandata. Here's a picture of it. Okay, great. So, I mean, it's especially important, again, with the distance, because you're not there to deal with stuff and to find people that you can work with.
Yeah, you have to rely on someone trusted in place, I think.
Yep,
just
absolutely.
For the basic stuff like collecting posts and just to inspect the house maybe twice per month to see if everything's fine and all these kinds of basic stuff.
Yeah.
It's really, really useful, I think, relying on someone trusted there.
For sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you don't mind, I'd like you to talk about your experience with us. So how did you find working with us? Very direct question.
Good. I mean, I felt that I had someone at my side who I know was looking out for my best interests, which is why you have an attorney, and why you need an attorney for something like this, especially where there's a legal process, the purchase process, that is, while it's similar to how it is in the States, is still different. So for that, it was extremely important. Someone I can, even though I speak Italian, I graduated with a major in Italian, reading legal documents in Italian is a different level of knowledge of the language. I'm a lawyer here in the States, but not in Italy. So having someone look at it and be able to say, oh, this needs to be changed, or this provision can be changed, we need to put this in, and explaining how the process works is extremely helpful and necessary, essential, more than necessary, essential.
Unfortunately, many people, of course not everyone, because it wouldn't be fair to say that, but many people just try to take advantage of foreigners, maybe in Italy. So this is another underestimated aspect, and we talk about this kind of aspects many times, because we both are lawyers, so we discussed many times about our systems and so on. So we in Italy, we have a civil law system. In the US, it's a common law system. So it's very different. But, I think risks are the same, actually. So, but we have a very different mindset because our systems are really, really different. And it will be really stupid, I think, just to, even for a lawyer, to rely on their own knowledge, because we are talking about two complex and different systems.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. Oh no, absolutely. For sure. Yeah. And even for me as a lawyer, it was essential to have someone. And then it doesn't matter. I mean, it simply doesn't matter. I could be a postal carrier. I could be, a server in a restaurant, a professor at a law school, as I am a lawyer. It doesn't matter what you do. You still need to have someone who can explain the legal process. You don't want to get sued in another country. That's not fun.
Not a great idea, I'd say.
No, it's not recommended. It's definitely not recommended.
I agree. Which aspects of our assistance did you find particularly helpful or reassuring?
Just knowing that you were there on my side, just that. I mean, honestly, that and that you're responsive and explain things clearly, explain things well, took care of everything that I needed, and I knew that I could trust you to do what I needed to complete the purchase. I mean, just that right there, which is huge, again, for a big step in another country.
Based on my experience, I deal with many, many American clients. So in the US, everything is fast, So, and they always ask me, please, let's go fast, and I always need to say, look, it takes time in Italy, okay? So, even for the due diligence, no, we can't just sign the purchase proposal without carrying out the due diligence. No, we need to be sure before you sign. So every time is the same story, and but maybe it was different with you because you knew something. So, but I think this is the most difficult thing. It's a very tough task for me to make the clients understand that it takes time in Italy, and it's crucial.
I mean, I didn't find the purchase process particularly slow. But post-purchase, there have been things that have been very slow and just very Italian in dealing with the bureaucracy. I learned long ago, I probably was in Italy about 5 years or so, that I realized it was not worth it to lose my patience over things, because I would have been losing my patience all the time. But it took like 2.5 months to get the water turned on with the water company. It was just this, oh my God, it was just endless. And it's going back to speaking Italian. If I hadn't been able to speak Italian, it would have been even more complicated. So yeah, you just have to realize that it is going to be slower. Dealing with the insurance agency has been slower in getting stuff done.
If you remember, Karen, we had some issues with the power of attorney because Karen came in December, if I'm not wrong, and then you weren't present at the closing. I went to Terni with your power of attorney, but we have some issues with the power of attorney, if you remember.
Thank you, Italian Postal Service.
No, it was American Post Service.
No.
It was USPS, I think.
Yeah, but it arrived so I sent it USPS. So United States Postal Service, which guarantees delivery in 3 to 5 days for international. It arrived in Milan in 3 days. And then it got stuck in Milan. And it was in Milan for 2 weeks or something like that? Yeah, and so that was, we can put that on the Italian Postal Service. So my advice to anyone is avoid the Italian Postal Service and use UPS or FedEx or something like that. Just because even though the US Postal Service did its job, it still obviously is coordinating with the Italian Postal Service. So yeah, that was a little bit... that got down to the wire, very last minute there in getting the power of the
end of the story. I went twice to Terni.
You did.
This issue.
Yep, exactly. And I was about to do another power of attorney and was like 5 minutes from the notary's office when you called me and said, it finally arrived. So I saved you like $250 too.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that was, definitely avoid the Italian Postal Service. And maybe now with the cuts that they're threatening for the US Postal Service, it might be better to avoid the US Postal Service. We can leave politics out of it. But yeah, definitely that was... it would have been better to go with FedEx.
Yeah, I've never had any kind of issues with FedEx or DHL, to be honest. So very quick.
Yeah, because you're avoiding the public postal service, exactly, which is notorious in Italy, and it's better than it used to be, for sure. As many services in Italy, there's some things that are better than generally on the whole. Life is more convenient and better organized here in the States. There are some things, though, in Italy since I left, certainly, 24 years ago, that have improved a lot. But the fact that the postal service is still kind of slow hasn't changed. Yeah.
Okay, Karen, last question for you. Then it's over. Would you recommend working with us?
Absolutely. For sure. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, for sure. No, most definitely. Yeah.
I'm very glad to hear that, to be honest.
And, without hesitation, for sure.
It's been really nice working with you. As I said before, we talked a lot about differences between Italian and the US laws. So it's been really a great opportunity of growing also. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Sharing your experience. And If you want to find out more about the purchase process of properties in Italy, you can take a look at our website, italianpropertylawyers.com, where you can find a lot of useful information, tips, FAQs, and all this kind of stuff. So thank you so much. Stay tuned.